Chapter 38. After over a week laying in the bed without food, Michelle was weak as a kitten. But she was chugging Ensures one after the other, getting stronger by the day. As soon as she was strong enough to stand with my help, which was a huge step towards getting her home. And she was still very much dependent on us for her needs, but by this time she'd been in hospice for almost a month, and we'd watch the staff there take use all the techniques and draw sheets and all those things like that to care for someone. And we practiced them ourselves, and we could take just as good a care of her as they could. So on June 11th, 2019, 3.5 weeks after starting hospice care, we finally brought my baby home. And she was still on home hospice care, and she had a PCA pump to deliver pain meds just related to cancer in general. But she was coming home. Now I got a little head start on the ambulance, and I stopped at Kroger's, and I bought several bouquets of flowers, and I wanted the house to be as beautiful as possible, and filled with light and love and hope, which was still very much alive in my heart. I can't explain the joy I felt to have my wife home. We set up the hospice bed in the living room, and we had an identical bed from another organization in our bedroom that Michelle had used before hospice. And it was identical to the hospice bed, the hospital beds, you know. So that first night while she slept, I very quietly disassembled the hospital bed that was in our bedroom that she slept on before. And I reassembled it next to the identical bed on which she was sleeping in the living room. And I did it really, 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 really quietly. And when she woke up the next morning, she was so surprised. And for the first time in months, I was laying next to her again. Now, before hospice, our beds were close enough for us to reach over and touch each other, but they weren't next to each other and touching. You know, there was a little gap between them, so we'd get up and get out. I could lay next to my wife again. It was a beautiful thing. And she smiled that first morning waking up at home, and she said, "Wow, you've been busy." And the girls came over around 8 a.m. and they would leave around 8 p.m., which would become a pattern over the next few weeks. Sometimes they bring the grandbabies with them. Mason, Adeline, Caden, and other family and friends came by as well. I can tell you that the bed next to Michelle was some precious real estate. I made sure to share it with everybody else, especially the girls, but I relished my evening time next to her alone without having to share. And the girls helped with every detail of their mama's care. And as hard as I know it was for them to do, it was such a beautiful expression of love. They did an amazing job. And my sister Jen was a big help too. One evening after everybody left and it was just me and Michelle, she remarked how thankful she was to have us all taking care of her, especially the girls. They meant a lot to her. It touched her to her very soul to be loved that much. And honestly, I don't know if another human being has ever been loved as much as we love Michelle. I still do love her. And I took the opportunity to apologize again for the remote. She laughed at my sincerity, literally waved it off with her hand like it was nothing. And she asked me to forgive her for any harsh words or shortcomings of her own. We hugged, and we cried, and forgave each other for our minor transgressions, for being human. And we thanked one another for sharing such a beautiful love so freely and completely. Now, maybe in the grand scheme of things, that incident with the remote wasn't all that big. But it sure would have felt like it was if I never got the opportunity to apologize to her again for it. I apologized the night it happened, but I still needed her to know how bad I felt about it. I can smile now at the recollection of her gentle amusement at how serious and earnest I was as I reiterated my apology. Her laugh as she waved it off as nothing. Rich in mercy, God's love knows no bounds.